Sir Tony Blair, I'm delighted to say, joins us here in the Today studio before speaking at the Institute's Future of Britain conference. Morning to you.
Good morning.
What is the problem to which you hope technological change and embracing that change can be the answer?
Yeah. First of all, just let me say, I think the government's made a fabulous start, and I think there's a huge amount of sort of energy and activity, which is, you feel the country's now moving again, and that's a great thing. And our conference obviously was scheduled when we thought there was going to be an October election. There's an election a few days ago, but it's
so
quite timely.
Anything you say is not planned as a critique of Sir Keir Starmer. Yeah.
Absolutely not. So the problem is that we have low growth, low productivity. We've got public services where there are high levels of expenditure and poor outcomes. The two things that get growth and productivity back are first the types of things that Rachel Reeves was talking about yesterday, planning reform, probably a better Brexit deal. These will give you short-term, it should give you a reasonable boost to economic growth. But our belief is that the only long-term solution to growth, productivity, and better public services is the full embrace of this technology revolution, which prior to generative AI was already a revolution. And now I think you've got with generative AI a revolution on top of the revolution existing.
You say in the remarks that have been released that it's a potential game changer, AI. If, you say, we have the imagination to harness it, what do you mean by the imagination to harness it? Take industrial policy first. We assume companies are doing that all over the country, doing it over the world. What do you want government to do?
Well, first of all, there's things government can do that will help the application of AI through the private sector. Things like changing our systems of procurement, deepening the capital base of the country. But more than that, if you take the areas where Britain is potentially strong, like life sciences, clean technology, artificial intelligence itself, after America and China, and this is the good news for the country, Britain's probably in third place for AI globally. We have in DeepMind, and the head of it's coming to our conference this morning, possibly one of the best, but even the best AI company in the world. So we've got enormous strengths, but we have to build those strengths, and that's a modern industrial policy. And then you've got the applications of AI that you can drive through the public sector.
Meaning that we can save on staff costs. I mean, there's one estimate in the report that's produced by your institute that 40% of the tasks currently done in the public sector could be done by this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at what's happening across the private sector, and government's all about process, you can automate a lot of these processes. So we have a report specifically around the saving of workforce time in the public sector, which we estimate at 20%. But in the DWP, where we've done the Department of Work and Pensions, where we've done a deep dive with one of Britain's leading AI companies, we believe that you could automate 40% of the tasks there, and also, by the way, give a much better service to people.
And finally, you say that you could massively improve healthcare, because we know one of the costs that's facing this government, all governments, is increasing worklessness due to increasing long-term sickness.
Yeah, absolutely. And with healthcare, and this is why I'm so pleased that Wes Streeting's there, because he's a moderniser by temperament and a strong character. So in healthcare, you've got two things that are happening. The first is we've got a whole slew of new treatments, new vaccines, new injectables, new diagnostics. So you can switch your healthcare system from cure to prevention. And there's a massive amount that you can do there if you're also prepared to do the other thing, which is important, which is to use all your health data. So every single person in the country should have an electronic health record with all their health data in the one place that you can transfer around the system. And we should realize that NHS is potentially an economic asset for the country if we use the data from the NHS to, augment what we're doing on life sciences.
There's the vision. But you, of all people, know that a new Prime Minister is now being faced, well, let's solve the junior doctor strike. We'll come round to that AI thing later. That's a long-term thing. What are you arguing he has to do now? Is it massive upfront investment to get long-term benefits? And if it is that paid for by more borrowing short-term in order to realise long-term rewards? Or are you saying that effectively that can be subcontracted out to private companies working with government who can produce those benefits?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, first of all, the upfront investment for a lot of these AI gains is not actually massive. I mean, a lot of what you're doing is reorganizing the system, and you should for sure be working with the private sector in partnership, because the innovation is not going to happen in government. The innovation is going to happen outside of government. It's government that should apply the innovation. And if you like, with the health service, one of the reasons why when I was in government we introduced tuition fees, and I know it wasn't a popular thing to do, but I could see at the turn of the century how universities were going to stop being simply places of learning and become an economic engine of innovation, right? And fortunately, today, Britain's universities, after America's, are probably the second best in the world, right? We have more universities in the top 50 in Britain than the rest of Europe put together.
They all, by the way, are massively indebted, many of them as well, aren't they?
There's a huge problem in our universities today. It's going to have to get sorted out. But the point is that if you look at the health service today, that again, look at it not simply as a service to the public, but look at it as generating, because it's one national service, the data that can allow you to boost your life sciences and treat people in a much more effective way.
Well, look, we've had 6 minutes in which you have set out the vision, but you also, in your speech today, set out the risk if the vision is not embraced. What is the danger that Britain is facing? Not because of this government or this party, but overall, the danger if we don't do what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's got really nothing to do with party or ideology. It's very simple that I think just as any company that doesn't embrace this revolution is likely to get left behind, any country that doesn't embrace it will also be left behind. And if you look at, I was just talking to one of the leading figures in the Singapore government yesterday who was describing the amount of engineers they brought into government in Singapore in order to help harness this technology revolution to change the services they were providing for their people.
But in Britain, you're rather specific in the comments that have been released. Britain is facing an unenviable triple whammy, you say,
because the present plans of the last government are higher taxes, higher spending, or cuts in spending, actually. But we have had higher spending and poor outcomes and rising debt. So
that's what this government will have if it doesn't embrace this vision.
This is its inheritance. The question is, how does it change it? And it's, in my view, the combination of the short-term measures, such as the ones Rachel announced, and then this long-term embrace of AI.
The chief economist at your institute, as I say, it's a very powerful and well-resourced institute, says taxes could go up by £53 billion if this sort of approach isn't adopted.
He's not saying that. What he's saying is, if you look at all the pressures that are coming through the system, this is why it's important we take action. We're not saying Labour's planning this. Sure. We're saying the inheritance that Labour's got means that it's got to take avoiding action.
But finally on this, to be clear, you're not saying this is nice to have. Tony Blair's kind of got a vision of the future. It'd be lovely to have. Do discuss it later. You're saying must have. Don't have it, you get higher taxes, you get failure in public services.
I think if you don't do this, then the future is one in which we're going to be poorer. And at least what I say to people is, because this is the purpose of having an institute like this, let's debate it. Because if you think of this election campaign and you think how many days we spent on Rishi Sunak in his wetsuit, and then how many days we spent on D-Day, and then how many, and missing that ceremony, and then how many days we spent on betting. I mean, in the end, none of those things are going to determine the future of the country. This, whether we embrace it or not, will determine the future of Britain.